Greetings and welcome everyone. My name is Nadi Hanna and I'm really excited to be here for this discussion panel on the extraterrestrial and human hybridization program. I am joined by some amazing humans. We have Jacqueline Smith and Marina Seren and Geraldine Orozco, and this discussion panel is brought to you by Beyond Being Human, which is focusing on the true potential of humanity and our multidimensional selves, as well as the presence and reality of extraterrestrials in our everyday world. I also want to thank our hosts, Neil Gar and Portal to Ascension, as well as Alan Steinfeld and his New Realities YouTube channel. Thank you both so much for the work that you're doing in the world. It's exciting to be a part of it. I also want to thank Sheila Seppi and her Wish Alliance that are working in affiliation with this effort. Let's see, I will start with Jacqueline Smith. Jacqueline, thanks you so much for being here. It's really an honor. Jacqueline has a BA as a certified hypnosis practitioner. She is an internationally known star and animal communicator, light linguist, and author who lives in Columbus, Ohio. She's been communicating with star beings, interdimensional beings, and animals since early childhood. Jacqueline has done private consults for more than 40 years. She communicates with a wide variety of star races, including the tall white Zeta Masters, mantis beings, Arcturians, dolphin and whale-like beings, celestials, and many others. In 2015, she was interviewed for the book, Meet the Hybrids, written by researcher and writer Miguel Mendoza and Barbara Lamb. She has also developed an e-course, How to Telepathically Communicate with Star Beings and Better Understand Who They Are. Jacqueline offers light language sessions and helps people understand their experiences with star beings. She also offers sessions to people who want to know about their hybrid children. Jacqueline is the author of Animal Communication, Our Sacred Connection with Animals and Star Origins and Wisdom of Animals, and Talks with Animal Souls and Star Beings in the Mirror, My Journey as a Hybrid. And then Marina Seren, who is this amazing being joining us. She's a psychic medium, conscious channeler, experiencer, ET contactee, abductee, mother of alien human hybrid children in the hybrid programs, secret space programs, and psychic soldier and insider and MK Ultra survivor. It is a remarkable feat to have you here today on this panel. I'm honored that you're here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. All the way from Spain, yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And lastly, Geraldine Orozco is a certified hypnotherapist, CHT, meditation master, MT, neurolinguistic practitioner, NLP, mindfulness-based stress reduction therapist, MBSR, Qigong master, and owner of San Francisco-based Bay Area Meditation, which offers virtual corporate meditation programs internationally. She has 12 years of experience in the holistic energy healing arts with certifications, advanced pranic healing, quantum energetic healing, and studied for several years under a shamanic energy healer. Geraldine now dedicates herself to the dissemination of knowledge of hybridization programs and the re-examination of the commonly held dogma of the human genetic timeline, historical record, and advanced healing of the human biostructure. She is currently writing her first book, DNA Origins and the Human Hybridization Program. Founder of hybridmother.com, an international research and support group for experiencers and contactees of ID phenomenon. She's co-director of Opus, the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support. Geraldine's story is now part of a 16-time winning documentary called Extraordinary the Seeding. She is a radio host, artist, and international speaker and YouTuber. You can schedule a one-on-one session with Geraldine at geraldineorozco.com. And we will have all of the contact information for all of the support networks and agencies at the, in the chat and at the end of the panel discussion. And I'll say a little bit about myself as well. I started my professional career as in the mental health profession as a psychotherapist, and I decided to move towards more integrative and holistic health practices. And in that leap, I had a activation with crop circles, and I did not know it at the time. And so I spent quite a bit of time in the field of unified physics and sacred geometry, which led me to back to the crop circles, which then led me to another activation, this time giving me an understanding of my interdimensional nature and self, which then led me to working with advanced civilizations and different subjects about our multidimensionality that I like to teach, namely light language and interspecies communication, drawing sacred geometry, crop circles. All of my efforts are to, much like this panel, share in our explorations and our expansion of our consciousness, because now is the time. It's the time. That's part of why we're doing the panel, and feels like a passion of mine to be in service of this effort. So, and I know that's a shared passion, is the sense of service to humanity and our evolutionary uplift, right? It's fundamental. So thank you all. And what I'd like to do is turn it over to each of you to kind of succinctly give us additional information, your relationship with the hybrid program, what brought you, what your experience is, and then we'll get into some of the conversation. So let's see. Jacqueline, would you like to start us off, please?
Sure, thank you. Well, I am a hybrid. Basically, my mother was taken aboard a starship when I was still in the womb. And so I was injected with, we could say, a DNA cocktail of 7 different races, 7 different DNA races. And so it's certainly been a journey, and I consider myself much more star being than human. And I agreed on the soul level to be part of the hybridization program. So when I was 14, I saw a starship, blue sky, just above trees in the backyard. And they took me aboard, and they started preparing me for the hybridization program. So they communicated to me about it, reminded me that I had agreed to be a part of that. So when I was a teenager, probably 16, 17 or so, I had 2 hybrid children or so, through them implanting embryos within me. And what they did at a certain point of time was they removed those embryos. And it was quite amazing that they had a way of simply removing them right through my body, out of my womb. And then they continue to create the hybrid children with those embryos, so there was no pain involved whatsoever. So I have a couple hybrid children in that way. And also later on, they took a strand of hair of mine, and it has the DNA, my DNA in it. And so they created 3 hybrid children that way as well. And those children were actually put, we could say, they were like within my field, my auric field. And I could see them, I could communicate with them. And at some point I was getting a little too attached to them. So I said to my star family, you need to remove them from me. So they did that. And I do have like about 40 hybrid children, and they have created those children in all kinds of different ways through taking strands of my hair, as well as, again, a couple times they did implants with me with embryos, and then taking them. And then I also had some experiences, one with the mantis, where we energetically embraced, connected while I was on the ship later on, a little later on in my life. And so you could say that our essences merged, our biofields merged, and there, we were like in a spiral of light. And then between us, there were like orbs appearing, which were hybrid children. And then those children, those beings, those orbs were then outside of us. And I actually got to watch them evolve right before my eyes into mantis hybrids. And one minute I saw them, they were very young. We could, you know, of course, the star beings have the ability to grow them at whatever speed they want to, but they were there very young. And, you know, 5-10 seconds later, they look like teenagers and they continue to evolve. So I've had, you know, that's a very blissful experience where merging with the mantis being was just, you know, it's beyond words, an incredible experience. And it's not about sex or gender or anything like that. It's just about the merging of essence. So a lot of groups are able to merge and create hybrid children from merging. It's different than how it is on Earth. So I am in communication with my hybrid children. When they come, since I have 40, there's one who's kind of the spokesperson or the one who speaks for the group. So that one will often speak to me about the others, but I'm really grateful. I have, you know, I can communicate with any of my hybrid children whenever I want to at any time. And some of them are off, well, they're off in other star systems. Some of them we could call like engineers of light. They're creating bridges of light between universes, between star systems. They're creating grids. They're doing amazing work. I have some hybrid children who are amazing artists and who are sculptors, we, you know, could call them, and into the arts in amazing ways. I have other hybrid children who are healers. I do have one hybrid child who is here on Earth in another country, and she is a healer. And I'm in communication with her telepathically ongoing, and we also meet on the ship as well. And so she was the one who looked most like me on the ship. And so they really, you know, part of the hybridization program is to integrate a number of these children onto the Earth plane. And so this one looked a lot like me. And some of the others, again, are in other universes work, you know, doing their work. And so with the hybridization program, I'm grateful to be a part of it and to contribute what I can. I used to visit my hybrid children on the ships, would hold them and love them. And, you know, they have to learn about their human part as well. So I really love doing that. It was very, very hard for me to leave. Very much a challenge for me to leave them on the ship. And sometimes I would cry, but I knew that they were being taken care of. And so I think with the hybridization program, it really is all about the evolutionary process for us and for them, because they are learning from us as well. You know, it's it's kind of a give and take circumstances. And with creating the hybrid children, they really are bridges, helping humanity to evolve, but they're also helping other star systems, other species to evolve, because they're creating bridges between those other species and humanity as well. But I love it that they're working, creating peaceful, cooperating circumstances between a number of star species as well. So I think the hybridization program is amazing, wonderful. It depends on what race you're talking about, because every race does things differently. So I'm talking about, my star parents are the tall white Zeta Masters, and the others on the ship, were Mantis and Octarian Zeta and Celestial and Dolphin-like beings and many others. So.
And that's great. There was actually questions coming through the chat of what are your, star family origins of those DNAs. That's wonderful. Great. I want to speak to the questions in the chat. We are tracking them, and we're hoping to get to them at the end of the discussion. However, if they're woven in and relevant like that, we'll try to make sure that we cover them without, moving with the flow as well. Thank you, Jacqueline. Marina, would you like to go next?
Yeah. Yes. Well, how I started to become aware of my connection to the hybridization program was through a series of spiritual processes, both in synchronicity and many experiences that I eventually had with these beings when my spiritual awakening was initiated. I remember I was always sure that I was not fully human when I was awakening to my multidimensional nature and to my star-seed origins, and that in fact my genetic makeup was expressing a little bit more of the extraterrestrial, let's say, energy or component than in certain other humans on our planet Earth. And I've always felt really different. I always felt that how I perceive things, how I conceived things as to like the very same structure of reality or consciousness or existence was pretty much advanced, or let's say out of this world, for a normal human to be able to integrate all these concepts at such a young age and with such, let's say, flow, it was pretty flawless to me. So I got to realize or think that perhaps it's true that this information was coming from another dimension that was being, let's say, projected from my own genetic makeup, that that aspect of my genetic, let's say, material was activating as it was activated. It was, let's say, expressing and unwrapping all these spiritual gifts and vision that higher consciousness, that aspects of our higher consciousness perceive and conceive and express, in awareness. So I was pretty sure that, having innate psychic abilities and consciousness and awareness that I felt to be not from this dimension was a sign of being hybrid. So I was told in a download from my star guides and star family that when I was, let's say, neck in the womb of my mom, similar to Jacqueline's story, I was hybridized with extraterrestrial genetic material, so that I will express more of these hybrid genetics when I will be born. And so when I will grow up and I will be in the middle of my spiritual awakening, I will start to receive confirmation and signs from the universe, the phenomenon of synchronicity, in which I could see the word hybrid everywhere. And so by that time, I was friends with a channeler, and he invited me to his sessions, one of his sessions. And I eventually get to ask these beings if the words hybrids in my synchronicity experience was a confirmation to my theory that I was a hybrid. And they replied that indeed I was a hybrid. So I was right on that hypothesis. But furthermore, that the main point of that synchronicity at that moment signified that I was part of the hybridization program too. So once that door was open to me, when I integrated that in my physical awareness, a variety of experiences will be manifested in my life. It all started with certain astral encounters with the great beings and with hybrids, in which they will start to play with me when I will be on bed, and they will join around me, and they will express this trickster, playful energy and tease me a little bit, invite me to join them to their vibration in other dimensions and altered versions of Earth. And so I will pretty much astral travel to join them and meet other beings that were also part of this hybridization agenda, such as humanoid beings, for instances. They welcomed me and they said that they were pretty happy that my reality was starting to look closer and closer to theirs, so that we will be more harmonically compatible to interact further and to co-create more consciously. And I also have met other significant experiences, such as when I had a sexual encounter with a Pleiadian counterpart, that I later found out that it was also part of the hybrid programs. So when we express that sexual encounter, that experience of energetically merging our heart and our souls together, both in the metaphysical plane when I was awake and conscious, and also when I was pulled out of my body, I later found out that that experience itself was also contributing to the hybridization agenda, because it's one of the many methods that these beings have to, let's say, co-create this hybrid agenda, these hybrid programs, the creation of these hybrid beings and entities. And so later on, one of the other experiences I had, it's the presentations of my hybrid children. One of them being a group of humanoid ETs who presented themselves as, let's say, a group that was part of other hybrid programs that had to do with the gray ones, but it was not the same one. It was also for the really similar purposes and really similar missions and goals that the other had. And so they got me to their ship, and they used another woman as a surrogate to be able to give birth to what it will be my baby, because I wasn't able at that time to go through the process of pregnancy and birth. And so they used this other woman as a surrogate, and they showed me the experience of that woman having the baby. I was next to her when the baby was being born. And so they took the baby on their arms and they showed it to me, and it was a cute baby with green skin and really big dark eyes. Now what I felt, it's that being had mantis DNA, and they presented it as one of my hybrid children. Another experience of hybrid presentation I had, it's when a gray entity that is a counterpart of mine visited me to my home, but in an altered version of my home, in an altered different dimension. And so we were in the astral, and he showed me about two different children that were about 5 years old or something, and they were playing around. And then he was holding on his arms a cute baby or a toddler. He was a little bit more grown up than the baby was, the babies are. And he had slight gray skin, really, really soft skin, because I got to be able to touch his skin, his face. And he had really big eyes, and it was really cute and really beautiful. And the last hybrid presentation I had was with a Sakhani child, which is also known as Sasani. I was holding it in my arms, I was giving it love, and as well as other children who were not mixed with gray DNA, but rather bleeding DNA. They were blonde, they had pretty bright blonde hair, pretty bright skin, really beautiful purple irises, purple eyes. And one of them was a female and one of them was a male, and they're really happy to meet me, for the first time. And it was a lovely experience for sure. I know and I can tell that one of my main purposes here, it's as a hybridized humans, it's to assist not only in the hybrid agenda as to the giving away of my genetic material, but also to the idea of grounding hybrid consciousness to the planetary matrix of the Earth consciousness and collective, so that we can create a bridge, a harmonic bridge between these hybrid consciousness and us humans in this process of evolution of humanity.
That was beautiful. I had to write that down because that's just an extraordinary encapsulation. And I want to revisit in terms of the vision and the efforts of the hybrid program. What is the overall goal? Hopefully we'll get to that, but that was the divine summary. Thank you, Marina. Geraldine, would you like to jump in and share your experience with the hybridization program?
Well, I am a lifelong contactee, and I've had contact since the age of 5, where I began participation in the hybridization program. I had several pregnancies that were occurring and then going through something that would feel like a miscarriage, but there would not be any fetus, and that happened very specific times in my life. And at the moment, I wasn't aware of what that was connected with. I wasn't connected with anything interdimensional at the moment. In 2013, I had a conscious contact experience in which I was with them physically and taken on board a craft and introduced to my hybrid children information about my lineage, aspects of myself that had been existing in other timelines. And this is when my paradigm kind of began to really, really shift. I had been working many years before that, just right before that, to deprogram Earth matrix programming, false belief systems, fears, anxieties, everything that went down my ancestral lineage. And I think it kind of opened up this second layer of understanding of our multidimensionality. It's as if I tuned into the next layer of our reality. And I believe that's where I began to have access to this higher information as to where my participation was going. And I began to ask questions as I had those experiences, and noticing that actually many people around the world were experiencing the hybridization program, having these kinds of anomalous pregnancies, having it go down the family lineage. And when I began to kind of talk to my family about it, we began to discover that many women in the family had also undergone the same thing. So it really struck my interest in that it's not just a non-physical thing. It's not just something that is a concept or etheric. It's very much affecting the physical current reality. And my question was why? Why and who are we? What makes the human? If we are living in this incredible universe, and at that moment, the question of what ET consciousness, or extraterrestrials even, seems so far-fetched, but at the same time you think we live in a multidimensional reality, and on top of that, many universes, right? We have infinite universes and suns. So the idea that we are the only life that is, producing life here on this planet is pretty silly, And then when you start to look at these other aspects of it, you begin to realize that there's way more to what we are as humans. We actually are incredibly important. I started to research our DNA, and as I began to further deconstruct my limiting beliefs, I began to look at ourselves through my psychic abilities that were activated after that contact experience at my multidimensional field. And what I discovered by looking at myself is that our DNA is actually storing way more information than we understand. Everything that our biologists want to call junk DNA is actually the key to understanding the genetic coding, the blueprint of the human. And when we start to understand that these kinds of hybridization programs have been occurring since the beginning of the inception of life on this planet, we begin to see that we are a product of that hybridization. And so that's what I kind of started to research, obviously beginning with myself, my history, my family lineage, and tracing it all the way back to its origin. And then looking at other layers of reality, as I began to notice that these hybrids, I had actually 24 hybrid children in 4 different primary programs, some of which were low vibration, some of which were high vibration. And I guess the whole concept of hybridization had to do with the vibrational frequency of each organism and the union of these organisms, the organism being the human and the other organism being this other consciousness. And this consciousness, actually, when these two merge, it is basically activating our blueprint, our DNA, because what happens is that we actually kind of temporarily kind of deprogram or disconnect from the information that is available within our genetic code at the time of birth, in that we're not easily accessing that information, and because we are bombarded with programming. And so when I went through the awakening process, and this happens to many people as well, when they go through the awakening process, they then begin to access this information. They have vision, they have interdimensional activity beginning to happen, and psychic abilities. And so I began to research my own hybrid programs and follow through these kinds of agendas, understanding what was the purpose of them, from the higher vibration to the lower vibration agendas. I was taken on board many different kind of mothership crafts in which the hybrids were being created, nurtured, and developed. And much like Jacqueline was just expressing a moment ago, the process of seeing these hybrids develop right before your eyes or in a very different timeline was something incredible, because it really makes you understand that in our human mind, where we want to compartmentalize the gestation process within 9 months, it's actually a completely different processes that we're dealing with here. It's completely time literally does not exist. You're working on a different dimensional timelines. And so the way that this genetic information is activating, it's merging our genetic history with the genetic history of these other bloodlines. And every genetic history is almost like a portal into a certain dimensional plane. It's like a number, a sound, a frequency. And it begins to open up an entire understanding, activating parts of the human body, activating parts of your mind, your understanding of things, of the greater universe. And so little by little, as you begin to understand your participation in the hybridization program, you begin to kind of expand your understanding of the multiverse. I believe that this is part of the process of evolution of mankind. And I think that as we deprogram the limiting beliefs of the matrix or this hologram, we kind of begin to access other higher dimensional aspects of ourselves that we have access to. So, in short, I guess the biggest takeaway from my hybrid experience was a very profound understanding of our holographic DNA. DNA actually being a holographic system of information, and how this information is activated, how it's deactivated. What does it mean when we have specific species? Every species is like a vibrational frequency. There's a spectrum of species, and within them we are accessing different levels of information. Also, different historical historic timelines in our evolutionary process in the multiverse. So it's very interesting that all of us have that encoded, like a cocktail. Literally, we are all a product, a cocktail of that genetic code, which tells us that we are one. This is one of the most profound and incredible, I guess, proofs, you can say, how we are really one. And we're not only one with all of the human organisms on this planet, but we are one with many dimensional aspects of ourselves and the greater organism that is this multiverse that we're participating in. So I think that's it. I think I'll end it right there.
Oh my. I've had the pleasure of interviewing all of you before, and Geraldine, every time I'm just like, oh my gosh, that was so comprehensive. Where on earth do we go? Because there's so much packed into your experience. Thank you so much. I was recently talking with Sheila as well, and she said that the most recent data is that there are 70 quintillion planets in our galaxy alone. So universe seems more reasonable, but it's just proof of how hard it is for our brains to really conceptualize of interdimensional space and, the Akash, which is like every opportunity that you're talking about for a different timeline. I mean, we really have been cut off from that information. So speaking of which, to my way of thinking, these are extraordinary downloads, right? You've received this information through your experience with these extraterrestrial beings, with the deprogramming and reprogramming. So can you talk a little bit about that experience? And what I'm going for is, the telepathic exchange, the information transfer, how you integrated that information going from a sort of limited programming, although maybe you all weren't so constricted by the limiting program. As the question is, what was that transition like into receiving and containing and holding and processing that very elevated level of consciousness and information? I sure hope that makes sense. I'm trying to go for what was it like to receive all of this? And Jacqueline, why don't we start with you? We'll go back to hearing your voice.
So it's really been a lifelong journey of integrating all of the information, all of my experiences, and so I mean, and so the 7 different aspects of me on a DNA level, but I'm also in contact with all of those species. They are multidimensional parts of me that I had to work with each part to integrate them, which was a real interesting experience. And so we could say I was integrating them, and each one was a different frequency, had different energies. And they were having a hard time integrating with me because Earth is such a dense frequency. And they were actually integrating into my aura, into my energy fields in a bigger way than they had been, if that makes sense. And so with each of them, I was communicating with each one. I was doing my best to help them integrate into my energy fields. But at the same time, I think what's important to remember is that they were integrating me as well. So it was a very, very interesting process, to say the least. And it took me a while to be able to do that integration. I've had a number of downloads. Anyway, integrating them into my energy field. So it's been quite a process, and it continues. I mean, I'm continuing to have expansions, downloads, new aspects of my soul, as well as other beings coming. And so it's a really deep, profound integration, and it just continues. And I'm just again, it really shifted me in my life and who I am in many, many ways. And I came to understand each one's frequency at a much deeper level. So it's been a lifelong thing. You know, when I was really young, I had star beings coming to me then, and you know, trying to integrate that energy even then, because I was on the starship at 3 years old. So they were, you know, it's been a lifelong process of integrating all these energies, and I just continue to do that and to understand them at a deeper level.
You know, just recalling all of my conversations with you all and previous occasions, it seems that all three of you had very supportive family situations, and you weren't necessarily ostracized or pathologized to a large extent, right? Some waves of questioning and doubt, which would obviously be part of the process. But I'm remembering that, Jacqueline, as you're speaking, you had parents who were supportive and
no, I didn't.
Nope. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Can you say a little more?
My star family has been and is very, very supportive. My parents were not aware of any of this. The star beings had blocked all memories of what had happened, including blocking my mother's memory of being on the ship. But I think on a subconscious level, my mother knew that there was something different about me, because she made a comment in a sarcastic way, "You've always been different." So no, I was not supported, and it was very lonely, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful for all the support I had from spirit, from the star beings who were with me through the years.
Right. Okay, right. And it's so interesting because you talk so primarily of your star family that I had made the association, right, which is just off. But it's so important to speak to how our resilience, how our earthbound support systems help us to integrate or make it a lifelong journey and uphill battle, you know, which is part of why Beyond Being Human is in formation, and why these panels are so vital is because, you know, offering that support, helping people know that they're not alone, and validating those experiences that have otherwise just been pathologized, medicated, and marginalized. So thank you for clarifying that, Jacqueline. It's a big deal. Yeah.
And later on, I did have some support, you know, from some friends. So I'm very grateful for that, who were open to all of this.
Yeah.
So, but it's it's quite a journey when as a child you're feeling very lonely. You don't feel like you belong here anyway. You don't fit in, and you just kind of deal with it. But yet your star family is around, whether you're conscious of it or not.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. it's a huge subject, right? Marina, do you want to speak a little bit to your experience of integration? But you are muted still.
Is it the integration with the hybrid children?
The integration of you coming into your awareness of being a part of the hybrid program and navigating the 3D experience and intelligence that kind of integration?
For me, it was a really pleasant process because since I was a child, I've always been obsessed with extraterrestrial life. When I was 5 years old, I will wake up in the morning, for example, and I will ask my mother, "Mom, where are we going to travel to the universe? Where are we going to go in spacecraft? Where are we going to meet the aliens?" And so it was really the desire inside of my soul to reach out to all these entities that I was already connecting from a really young age. And so one day I will go to my parents and I will speak seriously to them and say, "I'm an extraterrestrial and I come from another planet." And I remember that they will take it as a joke at the beginning, but then after some, period of time, after a period of time of me having claimed that so seriously and consistently, they will start to really question why a 5-year-old will insist on such, a statement. And so they will ask me, "Well, Marina, if you came from another planet, where did you originated and how did you came here to Earth?" And I'll say, "Well, I teleported to the womb of my mom. That's how I came here." And so since then, my parents will observe me grow up and being so interested in all these topics of the universe and ETs and physics and metaphysics and everything that had to do with a higher, let's say, perspective on the cosmos, like the matrix of the universe, that they will not only believe that I was perhaps connected to these beings, but maybe even related to them. They will not fully believe it and they will not fully support me on that because they weren't raised with such belief systems, of course. So it wouldn't be really like their set of belief systems that will make their reality, their experience of reality. But they will always believe, let's say a little bit, even if it's a little bit, that I was indeed having certain experiences that perhaps it wasn't so crazy as it sounded. Because when I initiated my spiritual awakening at 15 and I was starting to have these experiences more consciously and be able to integrate the information in my physical awareness of all these metaphysical concepts and what is the structure of reality, what are the dynamics or the mechanisms of consciousness, how does it work, and I will be perhaps experiencing like a visit from my ET family in the sky, and they will show up themselves in the shapes, and they will see how, for example, they will play with me because I will have a green laser and they will follow the laser. They will be witness to all these things happening. So they started to raise an eyebrow and say, well, maybe there's something here that perhaps is true, perhaps our child is up to something, and all these things that she has been sharing since she was a child are real. And so it's true that they weren't believers or supporters, but they always knew that I was also like different and definitely like really, really connected to all of this since a child. And so it wasn't like a new thing for them, let's say. Let's say they supported me as a person in general. So besides not holding the same set of belief systems, that support of my own person, like the acceptance of who I am just as I am and I was created and born, it was really useful, really helpful. I'm really grateful for them and I appreciate them a lot. And so the process again of integrating this extraterrestrial consciousness, it will start mostly when I was 15, 16 years old with the activation of my Kundalini awakening. As it's something that was really familiar to me, it didn't mean any sort of conflict with my belief systems, with my previous reality, let's say, that was perhaps a little bit more grounded or focused in the most, in the more mundane things or more like earth-based things, like my friends or my studies, my social life, all of those things. But But what's for sure, it's that it wasn't new for me, because when I will start to tap into all these ideas, different ideas and perspectives, they will not only become so easily to be achievable or integrated or perceived by me, because it will come as a download channeled by my, let's say, mediumship abilities, but also because it felt like home in a sense. That was that vibration, that perspective, that state of being, that understanding of the cosmos and the universe and reality, and how the matrix works, the holographic structure of the universe works. It was so familiar and it made so much sense to me that I felt that I remember rather than having gained knowledge, like from the start, like fresh for the first time in my life. So I knew that moment that it was an experience of reconnection, an experience of remembering that which it was already there, that I already knew. So it was like the welcoming of me back to my own home, to the home that I always been to. Of course, a set of series of spiritual challenges was presented to me in the process, for the matter of creating a dual system in my consciousness, so that I could be able to pull that stream of consciousness, that let's say hybrid consciousness from higher dimensions, to set the light on all of those dark shadow aspects of myself, so that I will be able to create this bridge of consciousness between the old paradigm, human, and the new human, let's say, the hybridized humans. And so I later realized that this was a thing that, of course, it was easier to experience or to achieve by people that, like us, that are connected, that have had experiences, or that are flowing our energy and focus on those, on these energies, on these agendas, on spiritual processes. But anyone really, because it's a monumental worldwide agenda. We are all collectively agreeing to become hybridized with these higher aspects of consciousness. And so it's not just a matter of genetics. Genetics, it's the representation of it, because DNA it's a language. It's the language that represents consciousness, that represents all the multidimensional facets of a being, an organism, an individual consciousness. But, it's pretty much about just the idea of consciousness and awareness, the spirit, let's say, element. So really anyone, besides their own genetic makeup or material, it's able, by flowing their focus to all this stream of information about, hybrid consciousness, to hybridize itself to become the new human. So it's something available for all of us right now on Earth. And it's a worldwide process that it's manifested and unfolded for all of us right now, mostly to the ones who have decided consciously or unconsciously to manifest themselves, or to choose this as their own path of evolution, their next step forward.
I think I'd like to focus on the consciousness, the shared collective agreement at this time in our evolutionary process. What was your soul agreement? What is this agreement with all of the races that we are in relationship with? Why now? What's happening? And Geraldine, could you start us off with the kind of why now, why us, what?
Yeah, absolutely. There is one thing that I would love to just kind of just add to this last question that you had that's really important, and just to make it in a sense digestible, practical. When we look at this multidimensional body, and how we have access to multidimensionality. It's really about understanding how this incredible instrument functions. When we do the process of deprogramming matrix false beliefs and stuff, what we're doing is we're cleaning up the vortices within the system that are holding on to information within that genetic code, right? So in the awakening process, when you start clearing that up, when you start moving this energy through the body, you begin to move your vortex of your own creation. When your vortex is spinning at a higher vibrational rate, that's when you begin to have access to this kind of interdimensional contact. You have access to seeing things. Your intuition begins to clear up because your attention is no longer in the survival mode of the first three chakras, enmeshed in the material physical realm. So as we begin to clear that up, that's how we begin to have access to the higher dimensional planes. And your vortex is moving, and as that vibrational frequency begins to shift, you now have access to the 8th dimension, 8th chakra, 9th, 10th, 11th, all the way up to the 13th chakra. And in these chakras, this is like they're portals. It's the vortex into these dimensional planes. And this is where ET contact is. This is where different ranges of frequency of those higher levels are located. This is how we have access to that. So in the same way, if you're still in survival mode, but you're beginning to deprogram and you're in the process of healing means becoming whole. Healing means moving that vortex. You can also have contact that feels traumatic, and a lot of people do end up having traumatic. And that's because there's still trauma that has not been integrated from the multidimensional body. It's a fragmentation. The more that this soul experiences fragmentation, the more that it's spread out in the three-dimensional plane in those experiences, and this vortex doesn't have the ability to move to the higher movements. As you reintegrate that and you move up to the higher dimensional planes, you're also going to be reintegrating on those other levels. And so this is also for many people that are having trouble right now integrating the process. We need to address trauma in this lifetime, things that we're going through now, because this is cyclical patterns of signatures that are stuck in our DNA that we're here to clear up. And the moment that we start clearing the physical experience, now we can move up to the higher levels. And also, this is how you can change any kind of traumatic experiences that you're having into a lighter, higher vibrational resonance with something, higher resonance. So to answer your next question in regards to why now, I think that actually it kind of tailgates on that last comment that I just made, because our entire multiverse is we are evolving, and in this process of evolution, in this process of moving, let's say the greater spiral, the greater whole, the multiverse is also moving through this spiral. And as it moves through that spiral, things are getting cleared up, things are getting healed. Aspects of expressions of creation are being opened up. And it allows the human to open up and heal those aspects of themselves as well. So we are healing here in this three-dimensional plane. We're here to experience this duality. Let's say the overlay of duality, feminine and masculine. We're understanding the basic laws of creation. And when we merge these two, when there is that internal marriage of the feminine and masculine within, this is where we come into the creator state. No longer are things being done to us. Now we are doing to the universe. Now we go into the creator state. And there's different ways of looking at this. When we talk about hybrids, when you talk about ET contact, a lot of people, sometimes they feel helpless in that. They feel that these higher intelligences are actually attacking upon free will in some way. But in fact, we are co-creating, we are participating on the highest level. We have agreed to these experiences. And the sooner we understand that agreement and the fact that parasitic consciousness only occurs if you forego that free will, now the human can be empowered. Now the human can be healthy. And this is kind of like, it's healing, on the next level. Healing our current trauma in our life, it's the first step. So a lot of people that are having the hybrid conversation, they're already entering the next step. Okay, they've cleared up. Now they can see beyond the veil. What do I do with that information? So all of these cocktail of DNAs are frequency ranges that are within our DNA. They are there for us to understand how to reintegrate them, how to become even more whole. And what it means to become whole is to understand what these gifts are from these different vibrational frequency ranges. So, for example, unity consciousness is what we're trying to integrate now. How can we see ourselves as whole and as the entire universe as one? How can we do that? And this is how we pull forward the human race, because now we are pulling out of victim mindset, pulling out of separation mindset into the unity internally and externally. So I think it's incredibly, incredibly important right now to have this understanding and doing the healing work necessary with our subconscious fragments and also fragments with aspects of ourselves that are in past lives that we're experiencing in other dimensional planes. And this is the participation. You know, it's part of the human participation in this co-creation. And it's a wonderful experience when you understand that you are really the one in charge of that co-creation.
All of this, it feels like it's all designed to be empowering, right? And that, right now for humanity, giving that power back, right? Like having us understand that it's been with us all the time. What would you say to someone, maybe this is their first hybrid panel, maybe this is their first exploration into the possibility that this has happened to them or that they're part of this experience or a community? What would your advice be on how to proceed in a way that can facilitate that integration? Let's go back to you, Jacqueline. It's been a little while since we've heard you.
First of all, I like to encourage people to trust themselves and I think that's very key, because there can be other people, again, who don't believe them and who might want to try and label them in all kinds of ways. And so with experiencers, I like to encourage them to, it's their experience. They went through that experience. They know their experience. And I encourage people to try and get a support system. I always like to suggest that people find like a certified hypnotherapist or someone who has worked with experiencers and who really has an understanding of what the person is talking about, so that that person can begin to feel accepted, that they're not crazy, that they don't need to be drugged or anything like that, because I have worked with people that that's happened to. So, and to take it step by step with processing their feelings and their experiences, just little by little. There's no rush to try and go through a number of experiences or whatever the feelings are at a fast pace, because that can actually, I think, cause more trauma for people. So if they do it kind of like in baby steps, that way they have time to integrate it, to kind of live with it, to feel it, to know it as their truth, and to really become strong in that, so they are not pulled off by what some other people might have to say to them. So, but definitely finding someone who's qualified to work with this, and again, rather than going to a mainstream person perhaps who might label them and want to drug them or put them in an institution. I have worked with some teenagers who their parents put them in institutions or drugged them because of what they were speaking about. So I think it's just a step-by-step process. And again, no hurry. no hurry. And I think that's a very key thing. And also they can journal about their experiences. That can help integrate their experiences, or to draw about their experiences, to do artwork with it, to express it in that way. And so that they can really, in a sense, make it more concrete for themselves. And so I think those are some wonderful ways that people can begin to integrate these experiences, to accept themselves, that they're different in some ways, and to find that support system. Fortunately, there are plenty of groups worldwide now that people can connect with if they feel they're hybrid or whatever they're an experiencer and having a very hard time integrating an experiencer. So I work with a lot of that. So.
And Geraldine, I know you answered the question in essence already with doing the trauma work and really addressing some of the 3D blockages to opening to the other intelligence. Do you want to speak to the hybrid mother support group that you have, though, as well? Because that's one aspect of how to connect with people and first steps that people can take.
I host a hybrid parent support group, and we do meet once a month. We actually have a very special event coming up this coming weekend, actually, where I take people into a group connection meditation and access necessary information to help them reintegrate and heal. So the primary focus of this group and what I do is to help people integrate and feel safe, addressing the trauma and also allowing them to prepare, just like what Jacqueline said, absolutely right, I couldn't agree more, healing the self and then reaching out to this other interdimensional information and helping integrate that into your everyday life. So we meet once a month, and you can register at hybridmother.com. Thank you for that.
And Marina, you're in this current more real-time expansion as being the youngest member of our panel and having these past couple years of coming into this experience. Can you talk a little bit about what you would advise anyone your age in particular, in their teens going through this exploration?
Well, one of the things that I already found out on people of my age participating in this program or becoming already aware of their participation in these programs, because we often, all of us, have started to participate when you're young, but the becoming aware of it when we are of a younger age is a different, let's say, experience of itself, because you're presented with this information that you're a mother, with this fact, that can be really shocking for people of, teenagers, of young adults, because it's a thing that, it's maybe not in the plans of anybody. It's not something that you expect to hear as, let's say, an exciting thing at the moment, because you might not be oriented towards the idea of parenting, or maybe you had different let's say focus or plans for yourself. And so of course many humans today they believe that to become a mother at such a young age is not a pleasant experience, or something that somebody will perhaps desire to manifest on purpose. So it's something that I will say that I have experienced myself. When I first found out that I was a mother, I observed that I didn't felt like it's something I wanted to manifest at such a young age. But when it comes to the hybrid programs, it's a different experience of itself, because there are many things that we have to understand about this, and it's that it's something that we have agreed on a higher level, and it does not impose to you that you have to maintain this, let's say, focus or connection at such a young age if it's not your preference. If you're not ready to identify as a mother or as a parent, it's fine, because those children are being taken care of. They are still connecting to this higher aspect of yourself, and you're still visiting them in the astral in, let's say, alter versions of Earth, in which you're available to them, and you're perhaps, giving them the love that you have for them and enhancing that connection, so that when you're ready, you can, let's say, start to download it, and integrate it more into your physical vessel, so that you can bring that connection more consciously here on Earth, and start to prepare, others to receive their children eventually. So, to be a mother or a parent, not mean to be responsible in the children. So it really doesn't matter if you're ready or not on that level, from that perspective. The connection, the emotional connection that you have for them, it's the only thing they need. It's the only thing it's needed for that process or that agenda, because it's all about the evolution of consciousness. It's all about how consciousness harmonizes with all these different, let's say, aspects of itself. So if you want to go forward with this, let's say, agenda or project, but you're not yet ready because you feel you're really young, it's fine. You can still be part of the agenda until you're maybe perhaps more ready to take in a more conscious, let's say, perspective. They love you unconditionally. You're always connected. You're always, part of their heart, and likewise, and they're being taken care of. So, there will be a moment, for you to have these, to manifest this connection with the times. It comes when the time is perfect and divine, and when you're ready, they do respect that decision, that process, let's say. And on the other hand, if you find yourself excited to be part of this more consciously, even though you're of a young age, or even a teenager, even younger than my age, you can go forward with it, and be sure that they will be excited to communicate with you, to reach out to you, and that how can you best do it? It's to do it from the heart, of course, because those beings are telepathic, and they respond more to your heart, let's say, frequencies, to the love that your heart space communicates to them, than your mind. So it doesn't matter if you're able to consciously, let's say, mentally reach out to them and establish like a conscious telepathic exchange of ideas. When you communicate to them from your heart, that desire of connection, they pretty much understand and receive the message clearly, because they're an extension of your soul. And they are so telepathic, not just telepathic, but telepathic, and so embedded to that heart frequency, to that of yourself, of who you are, because they so love you so much that you can be sure that they will make themselves obvious to you in many different ways that you can imagine, in many creative ways and beautiful ways that you can imagine, that it doesn't have to be meeting, it doesn't have to meet specifically your let's say, expectations, on how that process should look like. So expect nothing, because that's the best way to go forward with it and establish more of a conscious connection with them.
Yes, we forget that we can reach out and talk and ask. And as you were talking, in terms of their availability, so many people on the planet right now, I think, are questioning, like, where is their support? If they're right here, where are they? We're going down, like, we need help. And where is the intervention? As soon as I started to talk about the advanced beings that I know are here with me, the immediate response from everybody is like, well, why aren't they showing up? And so I'd like to explore that a little bit more, about how available are they. I have a secret agenda in there. My original question was, are you able to check in with them and say, hey, how are we doing down here? Like, how's humanity going? Like, what's the progress report? Because that might be a silly question in terms of the grand evolutionary scale. But I think what I'm asking about is your active relationship with them. Can you advise people about how to really activate that relationship and talk more and know that they are so available? And then in their availability, are they giving us a progress report?
Very important question. Um, you know, One of the things that I have noticed when it comes to speaking about ET consciousness and hybrids is that sometimes we get confused in that we think that because these beings are incredibly advanced technologically and they have this higher understanding, they are something that's separate from us and that is not us and that is higher than us. And something that I would really like to invite from my perspective is that we are the vessel through which the communication with all organisms is possible. So what that means is that the attention should go into the activation, the cultivation of this vessel, the awakening, the deprogramming, the trust, the building the trust and the intuition. Because when you begin to travel in the Akashic planes, when you begin to go in astral travel, when you're lucid dreaming, all of these planes of existence that we are constantly interacting in our dream time, we're most of the time not aware because we haven't trained our awareness during waking time. And that is not good. It's not good for our health. It's not good for our understanding of these topics. And it's also not good for understanding where we at in our progress report in the collective. So I would say that that's kind of like the first step that needs to happen, is that we need to train the intuition and practice our constant discernment in that we look at life, things that are around us in our room right here right now are speaking to us. They are communicating with us. We are communicating with them. We are co-creating them. If we're in hypnosis and we are in automated artificial intelligence mode, in which we're just responding to things mechanically based on our fears and the programs that we have inherited from our ancestral lineage, and all of these programs from the external realm, we are not going to have the foresight, and the attention is going to be on that, automation, rather than in enabling yourself to co-create with your environment, noticing the signs, seeing those little digit numbers, 111, seeing the birds, seeing the messages that are available to you at all times. Because when you begin to become aware of that, you realize that the entire world is communicating with you infinitely all the time. And this is where you start moving out of that feeling of feeling isolated and lonely and disconnected into a true understanding that you are the universe. You are the world that you're experiencing right now. And it begins with the emotions that you're currently feeling in your body. So that is the same for this interdimensional contact. And it's a little bit more complex and more profound, because what is being projected in these higher dimensional planes are things that are even in the unconscious, in the subconscious mind, things which we haven't even accessed yet because we haven't sat down to meditate and looked at our shadows. So it's incredibly important to look at the shadows, become friends with the unknown that we experience through fear of the unknown. And this is where things start to clarify and the discernment becomes clear. So the connection to these beings can open up, and it can be in a way where we stay, in a sense, we embody a strong observer that kind of doesn't have to allocate judgment or meaning to what we're doing. That's really the most compassionate thing that we can do with ourselves when we're dealing with these interdimensional contact. And then begin to navigate those realms. Practice your lucid dreaming, practice astral travel, connect with those guides. I mean, as a child, I had a connection with the Pleiadians, Seven Sisters, before I even knew what that constellation meant. I used to pray to it, and I used to say, I pray to the Mother of Aquarius and ask to protect me. I had no idea why I was saying that. So we are born encoded in our genetic code, the connection to all of these species, all of these beings, everything is already within us. It's just a matter of us accessing that information and then beginning to travel in that information. I'm not sure if I answered the question.
It does. I feel like it's the PhD answer.
Okay.
because we have a society that, we're, let's see, I don't want to be judgmental. Much of the conversation around our extraterrestrial community has been focused and a little bit obsessed on ufology, and we kind of can't get off of that. All disrespect. I mean, all respect. Oh, terrible pun. So, so I'm thinking that, if someone's saying, how do I contact the Arcturians? And the esoteric answer is contact within yourself, right? Like, I don't know that that's going to land. People want the bells and whistles and the blues and the ships.
Okay, so let's take that next step, because you're right. We're already there, right? So the next step is we're already seeing the veil is thinning, and that's actually what's happening right now. And it's going to happen even more. And what does that mean? That means that the dimensions are merging. The non-physical is becoming way more physical, and we're becoming more non-physical. We're merging with that. So we're seeing more things. We're experiencing more things. And so how do we prepare to experience that? Again, like for example, colors that you see are vibrational frequency. A lot of my clients, they begin to see blue a lot. They're working with blue energy, for example. That will tell you a lot of the kind of contact and the energy that you're kind of working in. If you see a lot of red, if you see a lot of yellow, beginning to understand vibrational frequency, beginning to understand what it means to you, how your emotional state is mostly at, the kind of tools that you use in your own meditation for healing, will tell you the lineages of your connections with these different species. Okay, the Sirian, the Arcturian, the Pleiadian. There are many definitions of these that you can research and understand. And we are expressing many of those because we're a cocktail of all of them, again. So whatever is stronger within you, if you're more artistic, more creative, maybe you're more Pleiadian. If you're looking at things holographically and very focused on healing, holographic technology, perhaps you're tuning into an Arcturian consciousness. If you're looking at biology, the sciences, perhaps you're more attracted to mantid consciousness, and so on and so forth. There's very specific frequencies that these are kind of like archetypes of energies that are part of us that are being expressed. So tune in to the animals that we're attracted to, the kind of constellations that we're attracted to, the lineages and the family, how the family is attracted to some of this information. Just notice the things that you are more attracted to, and the answer is within, again, you, but when you read the signs, you begin to understand that you had that access to them. And in meditation, when you are accessing contact, raising the vibrational frequency to a state of love, of unconditional love, will allow you to access contact with ETs, because it is that interdimensionality. We need to move out of the physical low vibration into the highest dimension. So the heart chakra, the throat, and the third eye, we need to activate that in order to connect and contact and even see and experience these beings, because that's the level that they're at. That's how that contact begins. And we begin to call into our experience what we want to see.
It's just so, every answer is so packed with information that I would love to go into more deeply, but I'd like to launch from that place of love. We could certainly stay in the conversation of manifesting beings and what frequencies are we working with, but I like to follow the last thread, and this connects in my mind to that progress report as well. Like how is humanity doing in terms of this bifurcation that we're seeing, in terms of a split of the choice for fear or the choice for love? How do we cultivate that connection with the higher dimensional beings? And simultaneously, it's not us first and then them. It's a co-creation. And so I'd like to stay on the subject of love, because all of you at some point or another, you come back to that. That is part of the intelligence of the hybrid program. Jacqueline and Marina, I've heard you both speak so eloquently about love and higher dimensional consciousness and how we can tap into that, and how the hybridization program is in part to help us tap into that and create that. Jacqueline, I don't think we've heard from you in a while. So could you speak to your sense and your experience of love through the hybrid program?
From my experience with the hybridization program, to me, it's all about love. I mean, the way everything is done, it is done through unconditional love. And the way the hybrid children are created, there's intention, there's thought behind, what that hybrid child will be doing. I love it that they align and create the child for what they're going to be doing. And then that hybrid child loves doing what they're doing. And I've heard this over and over. And with the program, when I was on the ship, when we played with the hybrid children a great deal, there are guardians who are watching over the hybrid children, we could say in the school setting, and they totally love them. And when we would all interact, it's just about all love, total acceptance. I loved all the hybrid children, and they loved us. We all learned from each other, again, about the different aspects of being human and hybrid and the different species and all of that. So I think, my experience was it is based on love, and it's also based on, again, evolution and learning. They are learning from us. We are learning from them, just like humans want to know more about star beings. Star beings want to know more about the human aspect. So it's like in that hybrid children, it integrates. And you can, like, I consider myself a bridge. I can talk about things from the ET perspective or the human perspective. So these hybrid children are so highly evolved, they can do the same thing. But the ones, my experiences are, they are very loving, the hybrid children that I connect with and receive messages from and share with people who ask me about that. It's just all based in this really profound love, unconditional love.
That is my sense of it. So I appreciate it being woven into the conversation. Marina, you've spoken so eloquently about love consciousness that is, the core of the program. So I would love to hear your thoughts, and then we have some questions building up from the chat that I'd love to get to.
Yes, love indeed is the, let's say, constant of that universe of what the hybrid programs are about, because most people, when they first become aware of this phenomena of the grace, abducting humans, and because of their genetic deterioration, like not being able to connect to that emotional aspect of themselves, they couldn't really relate from an empathetic perspective or experience from their point of view. That the beings that were taken were experiencing fear, because they felt that perhaps these experiences were a threat to their consciousness, because when the reptilian mind, it's not, with the physical mind, is not aware, of a scenario on the purpose of it, and it's alien to its, let's say, grounded reality, everyday reality, it shifts us to a state of survival, which is a reptilian mechanism of defense and survival. So most of these people really reacted negatively to this program at first. And so one of the things that the Grace realized is that we weren't physically aware of this contract being made of a higher perspective. So they hire other species like the mantids and other humanoid extraterrestrial consciousness to assist us in that process, so that they will be able to serve the program in the most scientific task, let's say, aspects of it, whilst the other will be given that more, let's say, emotional component to assist humans in their emotional reactions. So the fact that grades couldn't eventually experience that love because of their own genetic deterioration, that was one of the causes why this program was manifested in the beginning, doesn't mean that there's no love in between, because otherwise this means we'll have never decided to hire these other, let's say, assistance, form of assistance towards us. That they cannot do it because of their own, let's say, limitations of their current point of evolution, doesn't mean that they do not care for us or express their love for us on a higher dimension, or in a way that it is not perhaps what we used to know it for, used to experience in our reality, because love has many different expressions or ways to be manifested and experienced. And just the fact that they cared and made that effort, to make the process less scary to us, it already meant love, from that perspective, let's say. And I also wanted to end my answer with a reminder, because the hybrid program, it's really focused on the narrative, because the narrative, creative expression, the movie, the let's say, scenarios that represent all the symbolic spiritual processes that we and these beings are going through and manifesting ourselves in. When I mean that the hybrid agenda is a monumental process, and phenomenal, I'm not just meaning that there are just many people participating, that are giving away their genetic material or becoming parents of hybrid children, or teaching the hybrid children, or being taught, etc. That you might not be part of that program physically, let's say, and be doing all these tasks. It does not mean by any means that you're excluded from the idea of these programs, because when it says that it's a monumental program, it's that it's available for all of us. It's the collective itself, tuning into this material, tuning into this stream of consciousness that we have decided to bring and welcome to our planetary consciousness matrix for the, let's say, an opportunity, an open door of evolution of our species, So becoming a hybrid, it's something that is available for any one of us. To become hybridized, to become the new human, you do not need to do it from the perspective of being a parent or giving away your genetic material, or maybe perhaps having contact from hybrid children or hybrids themselves, Just by tuning yourself, your own consciousness, and putting your focus on it, on the idea, on the spiritual meaning of this agenda, what it means from a spiritual perspective in terms of evolution, the evolution of consciousness. Just by giving that focus, you're flowing your energy, you're paving, let's say, the path towards the hybridization of your own genetic material, genetic, let's say, makeup. It's a really general way, and you can be part of it in infinite ways that you cannot imagine, more than the things that we're just describing as to the narrative, the physical components of the narrative that it's manifesting this hybridization, let's say, agenda to all of us.
That was incredibly comprehensive answer. It's brilliant. I'm experiencing such an extraordinary level of consciousness and intelligence and awareness in all three of you. I want to shift to a question that is based in the physical body and what we can experience at times being these 3D human spacesuits. There was a woman in the chat who was asking about an experience where she had seen a craft, and then, let me make sure that I'm getting this correct. She was visited by a ship in a yard when she was 9, and then had issues with endometriosis, which later led to surgery. Is endometriosis, is that a common complication with the hybridization program? And I guess, I know, Geraldine, I've heard you speak to this before.
So let's clarify misconception, because it's not just that endometriosis means you were part of the hybridization program. People that have participated in the hybridization program sometimes later have discovered that they have some physical ailments within their womb, including endometriosis and other kinds of things like cysts and other kinds of scarring, other kinds of things that they have found either by their gynecologist or something, or an anomaly and an imbalance in their cycle as well. Okay, so those are all possible side effects of the hybridization program that we, up until this day, researching the hybridization program, have collected. Okay, but it doesn't necessarily mean that because you have that, you're a part of the hybridization program. The conscious participation in the hybridization program can become a very physical thing. You can have very physical side effects. I think that the people that have the most physical side effects are actually the ones that have very old bloodlines, very old genetic bloodlines that are here to disseminate this information into the public realm, because it's not everyone that's experiencing this, but those that do have an invitation and an opportunity to kind of speak to what's occurring here. People do experience sometimes traumatic experiences in the hybridization program. It's not that everything is going to seem like love and light necessarily in the beginning. And that's because the perception of the human doesn't understand how we ended up in these contractual agreements to participate. For a lot of us that are just coming into the topic, it feels like we have been violated. We question whether our free will, how did we participate as a part of this? And a lot of times that happens because we still don't understand what it means to embody into the human body. The human body is in itself a multidimensional experience. And a lot of times we are not aware of that. It takes a long time for us to catch up to that information. And when we do, again, I talked earlier about how the veil begins to thin, and now you're looking at things in other dimensional planes. You begin to realize that you're participating in many things, not just a hybridization program. It can be other travels, other universes, fragments of yourself might be participating on councils. A lot of people have these kinds of experiences, maybe super soldier experiences. There are many different things that are occurring here. So we need to understand the physical part of us will sometimes show those things in the physical. We might wake up with scars, with scoop marks. We might wake up with some of these things. Our cycles might be off balance because the hybridization program is utilizing the womb, but more so in an interdimensional manner, in that when we are inseminated by that, the gestation process is sped up usually, and then the fetus is removed out of the body and taken into an incubation tank. And in that process, sometimes scarring can occur in the womb. And as a result of a lot of scarring for women that have experienced many, many pregnancies, sometimes they end up with scarring. That's what happened in my case, that, at the age of 16, I went to the doctor and they couldn't understand why my ultrasound was showing, a lot of scarring and cysts that have developed as a result of a lot of this scarring, as a result of a lot of miscarriages or potential DNCs, And of course, I was a virgin at the time. So this case in my situation is something that I hear from women around the world that have experienced this. And it's not just an isolated medical case. You are having sightings, you are having contact, you are having presentations of your children. So it's a little bit more complex. So I would say to this lady, let's dive into why we believe we are a part of the hybridization program. And the most important thing is to understand what free will means. These agreements are made sometimes in other lifetimes, which is simultaneous timelines of ourselves, okay? And so until the moment that you wake up, you begin to have access to the information in these alternate simultaneous timelines. And so for us, it can be like, oh my gosh, I never agreed to this. I never wanted to participate in that. And the more you understand what the hybridization is, it is taking your core genetic information, which has access to the soul essence of yourself, and combines it with other genetic information in order to create another organism that is connected to all of these different species that it's made out of in that genetic code. The access to all of these genetic species allows this organism to have the wisdom, the activation, the information, the abilities that all of these different species allow it to have. It has access to all of those histories, all of those informations of those species. So in other words, these hybrids are then created. Sometimes they're raised on board craft, and sometimes they are reinserted into the incarnation cycle. Okay? So when these children are inserted in the incarnation cycle, they are put in a human to gestate and then give life into the physical. The child is born with an understanding, a clear understanding and connection to all of these different species. So this is what happens. It's the soul that is regenerating here, and it's almost like splicing the soul and maintaining it within this construct. Okay. I guess this goes deeper into the higher levels of free will, because the way I tend to look at these things is that this is a part of this construct, this matrix multiverse that we're participating in. Okay, and our free will is when we agree to these participations, and the moment that you also would like to stop participation, you can also decide, I no longer want to be a part of it. That in which you are also consciously deciding that you are aware of what your aspects are doing on all these dimensional timelines. And it takes some work, okay, to get into that and reintegrate from that. But the most important part, I want to leave this message with a clear understanding that we have participated in this willingly, although we feel that sometimes these experiences are kind of disconnected from our reality. We are consenting to them. And so our awareness of them is an opportunity to understand our multidimensionality and to empower ourselves as this human God creator and choose how we wish to experience this life. It's very important.
That's the first time I've understood the concept of our DNA being holographic. And I've really tried. And I had a real aha moment there in terms of the connections to all the different species. And that was great, because I feel like, it's been a short amount of time of me like with full immersion, really trying to understand conceptually a lot of this. And so that was wonderful to hear that. Thank you for spelling out the sort of the ripples that happen from this process. But what I'm aware of is a wonderful brain-breaking experience where I'm just cracked open, which usually means that an activation is happening. And so I wanted to really make sure, I meant to say this at the beginning for everyone watching online, but this is a powerful transmission, and everything being shared can really be activating, ancient suppressed pieces of information that could lead to experiences beyond this, dream time, synchronicities, and an activation of your own, hybrid experience and participation. So just to put that out there, I've gotten used to recognizing when there's an activation happening. So that might be happening as well. So a couple more questions. How does the hybridization program correlate to the morphogenetic process that is happening in our evolvement?
Is it morphogenetic as to the physiological evolution?
So hang on, there might be some clarification. Yes, is the answer, Marina, to what you just asked. Do you want to go for it a little bit?
It's something that it has to do a lot with my experience, actually. So it's really synchronistic because, all my life I have had these people, like friends and family, talk to me and tell me that I look like an alien, that I had really big eyes, and that I have a really tiny face, and many other different characteristics, like physiological characteristics in my phenotype that, were really different from like certain people, of my family lineage, or, general people. So I've always been called out for those features of my, let's say, physiological expression, and so one of the things that I also realized is that it does have a technical name, and it's what we call neoteny. Neoteny, as I define it, science define it, sorry, it's the ability to retain the youth characteristics, like the characteristics of youth, after having been through the process of sexual maturity, which is puberty. And this is a phenomena that we also observe in other animals. And the axolotl, for example, being the animal that expresses the most this let's say, characteristic. When they go through this process of sexual maturity, you observe that they still hold or maintain, let's say, to a higher degree that other species do, the characteristics or the looks of young people, which it will be like smaller face or, bigger eyes, or let's say aging or growing up, let's say slower. And so this is part of our own physiological evolution all along the way, since first we were hybridized back in the day. If we observe the first humans, they had a more like mature aspects, when they will go through puberty, they will have bigger faces or bigger teeth, or let's say develop more the sexual features, And so as we have evolved over the time, the process of puberty was not making us, let's say, develop so much these sexual characteristics to the point that we even look younger than we do. And this is something that I observe a lot on people that have been hybridized. In my own experience, I got many people ask me if I was even like underage, because I'm 21 right now, but I got many people ask me if I was underage because when I don't have makeup or when I'm not dressing, let's say more mature, people think that I look young in general. And this is because of this hybrid factor. We are going through this process of acquiring more of the connection with the inner child, that spiritual evolution of reconnected to the inner child, and maintaining it, because that's a really important aspect of awakening, to be able to hold, within yourself. Besides, after you have become a grown up and you have focus and start to, let's say, blend with that world of like the grown up, the adult, if you go through that process and you're still able to maintain that connection with your own inner child and let yourself be that child that you are, that everyone is, that's when you are most in tune with spirit. So that spiritual awakening, to your own inner child essence, to your own connection with spirit, with joy, with playfulness, with the universe, that is reflected also in our own physiological evolution of our own physical characteristics. That's why, in a sense, these hybrids also reflect these features, these bigger eyes, these, smaller faces, these softer, tender, like more tender, like looks, because they are here to remind us, that we are children. The more that our species learn to reconnect again with the inner child and maintain that connection after becoming more like blended with this world of the adult, with these serious, let's say, tasks, the more that we'll start reflect all these features also in our biological vessel, on our physiological matrix. So that's a thing that relates a lot actually to the hybridization agenda and to the evolution, spiritual evolution of becoming more in tune with the inner child.
That's beautiful. So I realized after you started talking, I'm not sure everyone would know what the morphogenic field is.
Are they talking about morphogenesis from the DNA, which is, I think, what Marina was actually talking about? The morphogenesis, which is basically the toolkit for the physical product caused by the genetic modification. The morphogenic field would be our multidimensional expression. So I guess it depends what exactly. I kind of thought it was morphogenesis, which I think that's what Marina was talking about.
Okay.
Is that right?
Okay. I think so. I will wait for a morphogenic field is the answer.
What I think of is, when we're looking at our multidimensional body and what we're expressing, and this is actually where the primary part of my research is going, is trying to understand what is being activated through the holographic DNA. We are a fragment, a projection of the information that is within that holographic DNA. As a result of that, for example, many children are born with recessive genes that are expressing from these different species, okay? Even children that are born with little reptilian tails, even anomalies in the physical body, different physical attributes, the higher development of the brain. And what I want to kind of focus on is also people that are from the spectrum or that have some kind of autism. Incredibly, they are very much showing incredibly advanced, even in their electromagnetic field, in their actually expression of their full DNA, they are incredibly advanced beyond just the physical. And so there's many, many amazing things I want to talk about this specific topic, but just to kind of give you an overview that depending on how much of the genetic code is activated, the organism will have access to more layers of its physical body. The seventh being the first 7 chakras, but then going all the way up to the 17th to the 13th chakra is where we manage this multidimensional reality. And so as we activate our DNA, we are activating access to the information located here. We're activating access to the species that we are made up of, and also the abilities, which can be telepathy, which can be psychic abilities, which can be specific kind of healing abilities. Some of these races are working with vibrational frequencies, some holographic technology, some light language is coming as an expression. So it really just depends on what is being activated. But the hybridization program plays a role in that it is the greater evolution of the whole organism. So basically, all the human beings on this planet Earth are participating in multidimensionally, interdimensionally in many different programs of evolution that transcend just the physical body. We are evolving on higher levels, our psychic abilities, our telepathic abilities, and eventually this planet Earth is going through simultaneously many different cycles of that. We look to the Nazca skulls, for example, which is a historic remains of another incredibly advanced civilization that is also a product of that kind of genetic modification, in which they have these incredible elongated skulls. And we see in our current race the Rh negative factor, for example, which we are having a very hard time tracing back to its origin. And we begin to see these little patterns in our development of our current human race. So these are wonderful examples of how the race is evolving. The new star children that are born, we have the rainbow, the indigo, the crystal, all of these waves of children are examples of activated genetic code, which in whole is pulling the entire human race as one field into the next evolutionary process. And the entire multiverse is also moving faster in that vibrational frequency to match the frequencies that are available, co-creating our human experience, right? As we get closer to the center point of that infinity sign, we are moving faster. And this is kind of where a lot of people are talking about fifth dimension, but in reality, we're moving in and out of many dimensional planes that the physical now has the ability to move through as we activate collectively. Over the past 2 years, we have undergone a massive activation, and it's only going to get more. It's kind of, we've been preparing for that the past 10 years, but this is kind of like the gateway opening into a completely new way of living and being. Everything's being adjusted to a new dimension of this expression. So, yeah, I think I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
That filled in a lot of curiosities, a lot of questions. That was very helpful. So thank you for that question. I think it was Mariana. I'd like to bring light language into the conversation and kind of launch from the evolutionary process of tapping into our capacities, our telepathy, our light language, all the clairs, all of our true capacities. And I'd like to just hear from Jacqueline a little bit in terms of your experience with light language. What kind of expansion did you notice that came with it? Because it's inherent, it's inevitable. In terms of what Geraldine was just talking about with that evolutionary process, was it part of your growth and expansion of your consciousness?
I guess I want to begin by saying we can all speak light language, that it is an innate ability that we have. And so actually when I was 3 years old on the Starship and was attending, we could say, night school and that, I was telepathically speaking many star languages with these beings, for example, like with the mantis, the tall white zetas, the Arcturian zetas, and so on. So when that was happening, I could speak it telepathically or physically. And on the walls of this ship, which are holographic, there are many star languages. So what the star languages are living consciousness, and they would I would used to stick my fingers through them when they were in the holographic walls, and they would come out and dance with me, and they would dance through my body. And through that process, they were raising my frequencies and expanding me at 3 years old. And so I love speaking light language, and it was very difficult for me here to learn reading, to learn how to read and write, because what I knew was light language, which is multidimensional and nonlinear. So to try and learn reading and writing in a linear way was very confusing for me. But light language to me is a part of our evolutionary process. And, for me, I've just continued to grow and expand with the light languages, with the star languages. It's kind of all the same. And just it becoming more and more powerful when it's coming through me. The activations are becoming more and more powerful in that regard. I love the light language. It bypasses my ego. So it can help heal. It can help us integrate all our multidimensional selves. And just by speaking the light language, and it's and so a person can actually set their intention and invite the light language to come and work with that if they set an intention for healing or whatever that might be. And so I speak light language every day. I'm speaking to the star beings every day. And by the way, I do light language sessions for animals because they're very receptive and just love the light language. They're so open to it because they don't have the ego issues. With the light language, I have just continued to grow and speak all kinds of languages. It can be the Divine Mother coming through. It can be Tara. It can be, Source. It can be the tall white zetas. So when I work with people, that just comes through for whatever they are needing, because they know what that person needs. And it speaks to the whole soul, the whole psyche, every cell in the body, to the blueprint, and helps to align. It helps to release the old identities and patterns for us to really come into our hearts and souls in a way. And that's where, we're moving to with humanity. is really becoming more aligned and attuned with our hearts and who we are authentically. Light language can do that so quickly. It accelerates that, sitting and talking to a professional. It isn't the same thing. This works, on all energetic levels, on the multidimensional level. So I love light language. It's amazing. It's joyful. I have a great time speaking it. Again, I speak it to trees, and I can hear the trees speak back. So everything is light language. Everything is geometric design. I think light language is a key step in our evolutionary process, and more people are waking up globally and speaking light language. Some people are just starting to speak light language. They're not understanding what it is or what's going on. And so, their souls are awakening them to that, activating them on, various levels, because they're ready for those codes to be activated and be opening. So I love that, which just creates more light in this world. And it's really amazing the number of people who speak light language now. It's wonderful.
It does seem to be growing. It really, if we're talking about the morphogenic field, there's this exponential kind of explosion, right? This shared intelligence. And I know that you help people in that exploration of their new. And I was just feeling like if you're available for it, a transmission might help us really anchor all of this information.
Love it.
Okay.
If everyone would just like to center and ground, feel your feet as though they are roots growing deep into the earth. And just taking a few deep breaths to feel relaxed, allowing your chakras to be open, just to be open-hearted before we begin this. And just taking 2 or 3 deep breaths, feeling in your body. And the best thing is to just allow yourself to feel this within your body, and through all of your bodies. Olakaye nokure tai turukuate si ushukute kamarayata lakaye na umataya taya nakaike umasate iki kamataya na ulete nanata zi sasukuteya uzaki amakarita te Umae u ala kue te ita uleki suku atamarite shikue te makarita umakayana taita nana ueti akaye umaya uria kuliki hanakaya umate isikiki amate nete usha umakarita kariokutale Ushukuke itale takoa musukikia ushu umate utadaraki kakaya natalakia umase kiu anakaya umakuriyita umashikikuwata ilakakaya.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, your transmissions are always very powerful. For me, I should have thought that through. But it was just so tender and loving, and Marina's cat really loved it as well. So what came through is this larger collective evolutionary process where some of us are coming into our greater capacities and opening ourselves up to sort of the true potential of our human experience. And I believe that the presence of hybrids, the presence of sort of these highly evolved beings coming onto the planet, and those who are here already, that they really are of assistance to that evolutionary process, to all of us stepping into the next level of our capacity. And I feel, grateful and excited. This is where I get my excitement. This conversation balances out some of the despair that I feel when I look at humanity. So I'm grateful to have been able to participate. Okay, we do have one question that's jumping in. What alien race is blue color? Who is smiling the biggest right now? For that one, that's wonderful. Geraldine, do you want to field that one?
Sure. The blue color, just because I brought it up earlier, it really depends I should have been specific. There's many shades of blue. There's many different vibrational frequencies of blue color. And in these higher dimensional planes, there are color spectrums that we still have not even seen here on Earth. They go beyond our ability to see. And what we're talking about is ranges of frequency and levels of activation within the genetic code. The color blue, depending on what it feels like, what that vibrational frequency feels like, some might be Pleiadian, and some might be Arcturian. Okay, just as a kind of an overview, these are the two lineages that I most see my clients with that bloodline beginning to see in their meditations, in their healings. But it's not to be confused with blue and indigo lights that you begin to see at the crown of your head in meditation, which is oftentimes your third eye chakra activating, okay, and also merging with your crown chakra. So it's not that simple. It really just depends on what other information, what you're channeling, what this blue light feels like, to you in that meditation.
One question that I saw early on was, are we all hybrids? Is the entire human race a hybridization? And I could step in for that one. My experience is that, going way, way back, there is evidence for genetic manipulation and the fact that we've all been influenced. I like to call it a huge experiment because we are influenced by so many different genetic lines. I've heard up to 22, but certainly there were origins starting, back millennia in the Sumerian times with the Anunnaki and Nibiru and the influence. And that story is very available through Zechariah Sitchin's work to share the whole story of that intervention. We'll put it that way. So I think I'll just give you the big yes. I think we'll leave it at that and build on it. There's another question, because if you look at that intervention, which was in essence to create a race that would be of service and subservience, to my understanding, the question is then, is the hybridization program a fear-based program for survival, which would sort of have its origins in that experiment, so to speak?
Yeah, it's something I was meditating the other day.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I came to realize is that, from the perspective of the greats, who will be like the future humans who deteriorated their own genetic material and their connections to their own nature, their human nature, they reflected that disconnection with their own nature as in their physical, environmental expression of themselves with the ecosystems, that toxic relationship with themselves of disconnection to the nature reflected as the representation of their disconnection from nature, which eventually led them to destroy their ecosystem and environment, their own version of Earth, and the harmony that it's supposed to be maintained in that ecosystem, that it's the, let's say, matrix that in which all different layers of consciousness or aspects, multidimensional aspects of one consciousness, which is the first density, the second density, the third, the fourth, and the fifth, and higher, merged together for the purpose of reflecting each other's essence, so that there can be that point of convergence for the matter of evolution. And so they destroy that version of Earth, and so they found themselves in a little bit in a state of survival, in which they needed this genetic material to not become extinct as a species, because it's also a matter of timelines and their own availability, their own ability to project themselves forward into a different opportunity for themselves to evolve and to save their species. there is fear from that perspective, but it is really not fear-based. If you look at the fact that this process, this ability to co-create with them in a sense in which they trace their DNA back, in which we were actually projecting a really similar potential to put us into that direction that they took back in the day when they started to disconnect with their human nature. If they decide to trace back that DNA, which is us, and to correct, to fix that quantum probability of us manifesting as a collective that path towards destruction, and they that have this let's say idea of co-creating with us, exchanging genetic information so that they can also fix it for themselves, that creates a perfect environment, like a playground for all of us, in which we both can be of assistance to each other and to create a better future for both of us. So it's like a meaningful thing, a mutual state of survival, let's say, with fear-based belief systems resulted into something so positive as is the hybrid agenda.
I think I've had this reflection before. Whenever I hear you speak, it echoes my experience with Bashar. And I was just watching him the other night, and because you have Sasani connections and relations, and he was talking about the mutuality of the hybridization program. So that's wonderful to have that occurred in terms of mutually beneficial. Thank you for that. We have one more question that just really wants to be asked. A couple people in the chat. Can you be hybridized without ever knowing it or without the memory of known contact? I think, Geraldine, will you field this one?
You can absolutely be hybridized without knowing. In fact, the majority of us, because of our programming within the Earth matrix experience, we don't understand what we're doing in astral plane, in astral levels, in other dimensional planes. We don't have any awareness of that until we begin to deprogram and activate our DNA. And actually, what we begin to discover as we trace back the history of the origin of mankind and the evolutionary process and how genetic information has developed and processed around the globe, we begin to understand that we really do. There is a certain origin point for these lineages, which means that there is an evolutionary process for the information that we have in our DNA as well. So that means that many cycles, many generations of the hybridization program have been present here on Earth for millennia, and again, this is a human time construct. There is actually no such thing. All things are simultaneously occurring in this now moment, but we are discovering and merging within those timelines. And the same way we're doing that collectively by learning more about our history, we're doing the same thing by going internally and looking at our past lives. It's very important to look, once you have deprogrammed yourself from your trauma in your current life, to begin to access information of your past lives, simultaneous lives, and then begin to understand that we're actually very active in other dimensional planes. So that's where you will discover your participation in the hybridization program. You'll begin to see the contact in your family lineage. You'll begin to see your origins, how your blood type plays a role in the kind of information that it's holding. So it's really, really interesting that we are kind of uncovering a completely new science of some sort of our spiritual existence, the expression, the holographic expression of mankind. And this is a wonderful question to kind of go inside and figure that out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like that's a real take home is, any of the exploration or fascination with the external world of the extraterrestrials is really, we've got the reminder that it's a reflection of our internal process, and that's really the most empowered place to start, versus focusing outward. So thank you, and thank you for that question. That does feel like a nice rounding out. How about closing thoughts and then a piece about how people can reach you and stay in contact with you? But Jacqueline, are you up for starting that circle off?
No, it's been just wonderful being a part of this panel and hearing what Geraldine and Marina has to share, and you also. My hope is that this will give, people some information, insights, perhaps, into their own experiences. And I'm sure some people will be activated by this as well. For me, the most important thing always to remember in closing with this is to remember that the most important thing is unconditional love and to be connected to source within ourselves and to remember that and to express that unconditional love the best we can.
Yes, and I feel so blessed to have had your transmission for us today. And how can people get in touch with you?
My email is jacquelinesmith@jacquelinesmith.com, and then my website is jacquelinesmith.com. So I do all kinds of work, light language coaching, and work with animals and light language coaching and working with star beings and hybrid children and all those kind of things. I have star music and that the star beings give me and that I've been working with and putting light language with, star language with as well.
Mm-hmm. And do you remember that you've been moving into some artwork as well, some inspired artwork?
Yes, I have a number of transmissions from star beings at my side at my light language store and cosmic portraits where they came through and drew themselves. And the transmissions are multidimensional, even though they're on a flat piece of paper. They are multidimensional, can be worked with for all kinds of different purposes. And a number of people tell me they hang them up in their homes and that energy fills their whole home. It can get them connected to specific star races, to work with healing and many other things.
Mm-hmm. And can you also just list off your books? Because I know I did it in the beginning, but it doesn't do it justice. Now people have a context and they might want more information. So will you remind us?
Sure, thank you. My first book is The Animal Communication, Our Sacred Connection. It's about communicating telepathically with animals, star origins and talks with animal souls, and all these incredible beings came to me and shared with me their star origins. So the book is all about their star origins and how they're working in a partnership with humanity and what they look like and so on. My newest book is Star Being in the Mirror, My Journey as a Hybrid.
Thank you. Okay, Marina, would you like to share observations or reflections and then how people could get in touch with you if that's available?
I have a webpage called www.marinaseren.com. And I offer a bunch of services like energetic readings and conscious channeling and also spiritual coaching and AT portraits. And my email is there. So if they want to reach me out, they just can find the contact window and they can place their message right there. And so, yeah, I'm also working on a book as Geraldine, and I'm still writing it. I'm in the process of it. But I plan to, let's say, create a compilation of all of the different channelings and downloads that I have been getting so far along my spiritual journey. So I will be announcing them probably next year or something. Yeah. And also that I will become also a YouTuber because I have a YouTube channel that I have been working into. And so I will be starting to, let's say, post most of my information also in the video format, on YouTube and that platform.
Thank you for being here today. It's been wonderful to have your presence.
Thank you for having invited me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wonderful. Geraldine, observations and contact info?
Yeah, thank you so much. What I would like to leave today's conversation at is just an invitation that really, truly unconditional love is really where we need to try to embody. and through that unconditional love enter into unity consciousness by using our discernment in all the things that we're hearing. We're all so much overload of information that is happening from so many different directions, different levels of consciousness. And so how do we find ourselves is by practicing our discernment. And just a note, an invitation is any information that causes suffering or ideas that you are helpless, don't have free will, don't have the ability to choose, are in a place of confinement, is things that we should question and take a look at. And in other words, we want to find the best for this organism to thrive. And our intuition can only function when we are in an expansive state of unconditional love, of joy. That's when the activation for intuition, heart-centered, knowing and discernment comes into play. And that's where we would like to be in order to enjoy this experience, this temporary experience in the physical and all the things that occur in the non-physical. Pulling out of suffering, coming into empowerment. And I think this is kind of the purpose of many of these panels, is to educate in a way that we learn how to do that and come into joy and unconditional love. So yeah, so I would just leave it there. And if you would like to get a hypnotherapy session with me, please do connect at GeraldineOrozco.com, also hybridmother.com, where I dedicate more work towards the hybridization and ET contact, any kind of ET contact, help you integrate your experience and activate the instrument of the beautiful body in order to enter into the highest levels of your expression. And finally, if you want to join the support group, you can reach me at hybridmother.com and my YouTube channel at Geraldine Orozco, where I post meditation challenges and really deep kind of work, inner child and trauma healing work. So thank you so much for having me on here. I want to thank Nadia and Michael and Jacqueline and Marina. Excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you, Geraldine. Yeah, I will testify the videos. Your videos are powerful tools of transformation. So definitely. And it's just been an honor and a privilege to spend time with you all. And I want to also let people know that they can reach me at my website, which is Galactic Rose Geometry. And I host calls and classes teaching people how to draw sacred geometry, or getting together and talking about light language, or crop circles, any number of ways that we can start to access our multidimensionality. Thank you all. I pass that to you, Neil. Thank you so much for sharing your platform and giving us the time and space to share.
Thank you so much. That was so incredible. The energy was really high, and just the love that you guys were all just conveying with your information. So I'm just really appreciative of it all. And just the whole component, the bottom line is unconditional love. The bottom line is unity consciousness. And that is the journey that we're on.
I'm just really happy to be part of this community, and it feels really supportive. And I think that's part of why the panels are so powerful, is because we're expanding the community, we're reaching out, and hopefully people really feel supported in this really extraordinary, unusual experience at times. So thank you so much.